like to thank everybody for attending this evening, and a special thank you to the League of Women Voters and Allison King for helping to organize this forum this evening. Those of you that do not know me, I'm Brian Tobin, Mayor for the City of Cortland. I'd like to give a little bit of background about why we are here. So several months ago, there was an opportunity for the city to pursue a grant to check and see if our infrastructure could sustain adding fluoride to the city water. It would have been a grant application. So before we filed for the grant, we talked about it publicly at a common council meeting. And the discussion that took place at the common council meeting, there were people for, there were people against, led me to believe that we should have further discussion and more education on the topic in general. More importantly, we want to also highlight why this discussion is taking place to begin with. So, Cavity-Free Cortland is a community-driven initiative that was started in December of 2014, and the goal is to develop, implement, and evaluate the local action plan to improve oral health in Cortland County. And we're fortunate here in Cortland, we've got a lot of people that are interested in helping others and working on different issues. So the whole impetus why we're talking about fluoridation of municipal drinking water is because of dental health issues that we are seeing in our community. This group is comprised of community stakeholders who recognize the importance of promoting oral health in the county. And the group has been working directly with the New York State Oral Health Center of Excellence for training and technical assistance. Within this group, they have 3 subcommittees. So fluoridation of community drinking water is one of the 3 subcommittees. I'm going to continue while Allison helps me out here. So while fluoridation is one of the 3 subcommittees, the other 2 is regarding fluoride varnish application and trying to increase use in pediatric and dental offices. And the 3rd subcommittee is involved in education, dental health's impact on overall health, where if somebody has an oral health issue, does it impact their total health? So we know some of the following facts about Cortland County residents. The slide that was just up talks about 1 out of every 2. So 50% of our 3rd graders have had a cavity. And 3rd graders, in terms of age, is typically 7 to 8 years old. 1 out of every 4 children in Cortland County has an untreated cavity. So 25% have cavities that are not treated. 3 out of 5 adults have had permanent teeth extracted due to decay or gum disease. And 1 out of 3 adults, age 65 or older, have had all of the permanent teeth removed. So these are some statistics that we thought we knew we wanted to share, because regardless of how the discussion takes place this evening, the reason why we're having this discussion is important. And the dental health and the impacts that it has on our residents is important. Why is it important? Well, tooth decay can result in days lost from school or work, which could mean lost wages or missed learning time. Decay and gum disease have been linked to heart disease, which is a leading cause of death in Cortland County. Tooth replacement is expensive and not always covered by insurance. Very quickly, a personal story. I had some tooth pain, and after a couple of days before I could get to the dentist dealing with the pain, everybody's seen the movie Castaway. I was thinking about knocking my own tooth out. I was in so much pain. Ended up I needed a root canal. I'm fortunate that I had a good dentist and I was able to take care of this. The question is, does everybody in our community have this opportunity? And if not, what can we do to try to make sure that people do have the opportunity to take care of their personal health and well-being? The planning committee for this forum included 2 neutral parties, Allison and myself, and then we had people who were for and also people who were against fluoridation of municipal water systems. In favor, we had Kathy Firm from the County Health Department and Jackie Carlton-Leaf from Seven Valleys Health Coalition. And against, we had Dr. Mechanadel, who is a professor up at the college, and Dr. Tim Schopp, who is a local chiropractor. The committee came up with 4 questions, and these 4 questions were sent in advance to our panelists. And each side is permitted 30 minutes total to answer the 4 questions, and these questions are available on a handout. If not seen, you may have some more copies floating around. We had talked about a coin toss for the order of speakers, but the gentlemen have graciously agreed that with PowerPoints, the people in favor of fluoridation will start off. Afterwards, there is an opportunity for questions from the general public. Please take an index card, write your question on the card. If you bring the cards forward, Joe Schaefer off to my left, your right, has cards, and she has writing implements. And there's some over there as well. Please write your question on the card. Tonight's forum is regarding fluoridation of water and the health impact. We are planning another forum 2 weeks from now, and the idea of that forum will be to talk about the bioethics and the potential financial cost of municipal water fluoridation. So it is a very large topic, and it is one that we thought would be best to break out into 2 different sessions, so that hopefully would keep people's attention through each session. Questions will be sorted by a neutral sorter. We're going to hopefully keep the questions regarding health impact this evening. All right, we greatly appreciate everyone's presence, and we'll give a brief bio on our speakers for this evening. Dr. Johnson, do you want to bring up your computer and get started? I'll introduce you as you're getting ready. Dr. Johnson is a pediatric dentist from Palm Harbor, Pinellas County, Florida. Due to a gravity-induced trauma injury, bicycle accident, his clinical practice days ended in 2009. He has a degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and his research project was investigation of fluoride content of infant formulas in the U.S. in 1983. The research involved literature reviews of water fluoridation and fluoride to complete his Master's of Science degree. He, along with 4 other healthcare professionals, founded the American Fluoridation Society in 2014. This group provides expert testimony to U.S. communities needing their help with boots-on-the-ground presentations in support of municipal water fluoridation. And I believe Dr. Johnson will be speaking on behalf of the 4 and so on. However, joining Dr. Johnson is Dr. Stephen Slott, and he will be participating in the question and answer section afterwards. He has his DDS from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill School of Dentistry, and he is the founder of the Missions of Mercy Portable Free Dental Program. He is a member of the North Carolina Dental Society and the American Dental Association. He is also a founding member of the nonprofit volunteer organization, the American Fluoridation Society, which provides evidence-based information on community water fluoridation. For the side against water fluoridation, present with us today, Paul Connett has gotten his undergraduate degree from Cambridge University and his PhD in chemistry from Dartmouth. He taught at St. Lawrence University in Canton, New York, where he specialized in environmental chemistry and toxicology. Since 1985, he has helped communities grapple with various aspects of waste management. This pro bono work has taken him to 49 states and 63 countries. And in 2013, he published the book, The Zero Waste Solution, Untrashing the Planet One Community at a Time. Since '96, he has researched the toxicology of fluoride and the problems pertaining to water fluoridation. In 2003, he was invited to give testimony to the panel convened by the National Research Council to examine the toxicology of fluoride in water. And in 2010, with 2 other authors, he wrote the book, The Case Against Fluoride. Currently, he is the senior advisor to the Fluoride Action Network and the director of the American Environmental Health Studies Project, Incorporated. Also joining us, and it will be via Skype, is Bill Osmundson. He is a comprehensive cosmetic dentist with 39 years of clinical practice, teaching, and mentoring dentists. He has a master's degree in public health and a doctor of dental surgery degree from Loma Linda University. For the first 25 years of clinical practice, he promoted community water fluoridation. He will present significant reasons why he changed his position on fluoridation and now recommends Portland not to fluoridate their water. So we greatly appreciate our participants taking their times and traveling, some from great distances, to come and share their knowledge and expertise with us. So with no further ado,
Actually, I'm going to go through the questions first.
Oh, thank you.
Allison Jane, representing the League of Women Voters. I'm your moderator tonight. And first, just let me say that the League is the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation of citizens in government and influences public policy through research, member consensus, advocacy, and education. The U.S. League has no position on community water fluoridation. Likewise, the New York State has no position on this issue, and our local Cortland League does not. Local leagues take positions only after a thorough study of an issue. So as Mayor Tobin announced, today's forum addresses a potential health impact of community water fluoridation. Throughout this evening, questions or remarks that are disrespectful, personal, abusive, insinuating, or duplicative are not permitted. My Skype contact is coming in there. Also, applause, cheering, and other disruptive actions are not allowed. You see Ellen right over there in the white shirt. If you want to ask a question, wave your hand. She can give you a 3x5 card. She'll also collect the cards and deliver them to Joe Schaefer, who's simply sorting to screen out anything that's not health related and to group similar questions so I can get a stack that are of a similar nature. So the questions from the planning committee, as Brian said, it was a couple neutral members, couple pro, couple con. The first one is on potential health benefits of water fluoridation. So what, if any, concentration of fluoride in drinking water has been shown to be effective in promoting dental health? And how does this relate to the concentration of fluoride from other sources, toothpaste, supplements, dental sealants? We asked the speakers to discuss the evidence specifically for the benefits of 0.7 parts per million, or 0.7 milligrams per liter, which is the recommended level for community water fluoridation today. Second question was health risks of water fluoridation. What, if any, concentration of fluoride in drinking water has been shown to produce toxic effects? And again, specify any evidence for toxicity at this level, at the 0.7 part per million versus higher concentrations. Identify sensitive populations, discuss the variation in response and the margin between beneficial and toxic concentrations. For all these questions, we asked the speakers to specify the types of studies that they're citing, what fluoride concentration was used, the populations that were studied, and discuss any specific data on population groups. The last two questions, narrower in scope. The third one, sources of fluoride used in water fluoridation. What sources are acceptable for use in the U.S. For municipal drinking water? What's the composition of these sources? How are they regulated and tested? Are contaminants present? What, if any, procedures would protect against exposure to possible contaminants? And then lastly, impact on infrastructure. Does fluoridation affect the structure and quality of municipal water systems? So these reflect questions that citizens have been asking over the past few months. And now Dr. Johnson will be our first speaker.
thank you all for having us tonight. Dr. Slot, myself, Dr. Connett, Dr. Osmondson, to talk about this subject of water fluoridation. The title of this presentation, or the forum, is Educational Forum on the Health Impact of Municipal Water Fluoridation. I am a pediatric dentist, clinical pediatric dentist of over 30 years, clinical practice seeing children and teenagers and young adults up from the poorest of the poor to the richest of the rich. Dr. Slot is also a general dentist of 35 to almost 40 years. His practice, he can explain, or I'll explain for you, is primarily Medicaid practice, and he also has formed the Mission of Mercy, which is a weekend mission where dentists come in from all over the place and see all of the indigent families that they can't see in a 3 day period of time, sometimes 3,000 people in a weekend. It makes a dent, but it's not a fix for the amount of cavity problems that are out there. I'd first like to run a video at YouTube from the highest medical authority in the United States that we trust with our health. We ask questions of Zika and Ebola and all of our health issues from, and that is the U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy.
This is why the CDC named it one of the 10 great public health achievements of the 20th century, along with immunization, family planning, tobacco control, and motor vehicle safety. Water fluoridation is the best method for delivering fluoride to all members of the community, regardless of age, education, income level, or access to routine dental care. Fluoride's effectiveness in preventing tooth decay extends throughout one's life, resulting in fewer and less severe cavities. In fact, each generation born over the past 70 years has enjoyed better dental health than the one before them. That is the very essence of the American promise. Our progress on this issue over the past 70 years has been undeniable, but we still have work to do, because we know that so much of our health is still determined by zip code rather than genetic code. That's why creating a culture of disease prevention through community efforts and ensuring health equity for all is one of my highest priorities. Community water fluoridation helps us meet these goals, as it is one of the most cost-effective, equitable, and safe measures communities can take to prevent tooth decay and improve oral health. Advocates and community leaders have fought for water fluoridation in communities throughout our country. Today, we applaud their efforts, and we will not rest until every community is equipped with the tools they need to help their residents live healthy, happy lives. Water fluoridation will be a critical part of that effort, and I look forward to working side by side with community leaders to make that goal a reality.
Thank you, Dr. Murphy. Let's talk a little bit about history, because I can't fully do justice to fluoridation without going back to how we discovered fluoride's benefits. Back in 1901, a dentist by the name of Frederick McKay graduated dental school, and he moved out to Colorado Springs. When he moved there, he saw something he had never seen before in school, and there was patients that had been born and raised in Colorado Springs, or infants that came to Colorado Springs and were being raised there, were showing up with these brown stains on their teeth, and he really did not understand what it was. The biggest thing that he found was that they had very few cavities. And if you think in 1901, someone having very few cavities, where an entire community is having very few cavities, that was something huge. Well, he called up his professors, asked questions, they had never seen it before. So he reached out to the Public Health Service and said, we need some help. He said, the only thing I can determine is all of these people that are here are drinking from the same water source, but that's all I can see. So over the next several years, studies were being conducted around the U.S., and there were pockets of areas in the U.S. where there were communities that had very low numbers of cavities, but they had good-looking teeth with maybe a few little white specks on them. And again, in those communities, the Public Health Service was finding that those people drink the water source. So they were starting to see, here is an effect of what is the cause of this phenomenon. So they've studied it and they looked at it, and lo and behold, a chemical engineer, I believe it was, developed a tool that is a probe that was able to measure fluoride for an industry need. Well, they took water samples from these two communities, out in Colorado Springs, and then in communities where they had good-looking teeth and low levels of cavities. And what they found was, in Colorado Springs, the fluoride levels in the water were from 2 to 12 parts per million. In the areas where the teeth were looking good with very few color changes, or white specks on the teeth, it was 1 part per million. And then you were like, okay, we're on to something. Here we have generations of people that even get into the military. It was either World War I or World War II. You had to have 6 opposing teeth, 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom to be admitted. And now, these people in these communities are having very few cavities, so they designed a public health study to look at this. This public health study was launched in 1945 in several cities across North America. They took cities that they were going to add 1 part per million of fluoride to, and they had control cities that they did not add fluoride to. Within 3 to 4 years, the obvious was there staring them in the face. The people, Grand Rapids, Michigan was the first city to fluoridate. Its sister city was seeing cavities continue at the same rate. Michigan's cavity rates in Grand Rapids for their teenagers fell about 60%. 60%. Well, public health measure, when something like that goes on, we know the health of the people in Colorado Springs was normal. Their heads weren't turned backwards because they had fluoride at high levels. They had teeth that had stains. We looked at the levels here. They said, we're onto something big. Well, just as with penicillin, when these public health studies are done, you have 2 groups. One that has illnesses, this one has illnesses. You start giving penicillin to this group, they get better. This one continues to get sick and die. You can't withhold a health measure from someone when you know that it's working, and that is what happened with water fluoridation. By 1949, communities were jumping on board. Gainesville, Florida was the first one in my state that jumped in. We just had the 71st anniversary of water fluoridation. The health benefits of water fluoridation was the first question. What are the health benefits? Well, cavities are reduced for everyone, regardless of your age, your race, your ethnicity, your level of education, your socioeconomic status, or your access to dental care. And I did a PS. You still got to brush your teeth. You got to floss them. You got to take care of them and eat well. You need to get regular dental checkups if you can afford it, and you also need to get a plastic coating on your molars called sealants. So there is a multi-pronged approach that has to be taken to cavities. Fluoride is only one of those approaches. Water fluoridation is the adjustment of the mineral fluoride in your water that is naturally occurring. It is present in almost all waters throughout the world. Cortland has a non-detectable amount. What it is looked at the level today that has been decided upon as being the optimal is 0.7 parts per million. Ocean water by comparison has 0.8 to 1.4 parts per million in a natural. Community water fluoridation is the epitome of prevention. After 71 years of water fluoridation in the United States, the facts are clear. It is safe for everyone to drink. There are no adverse health effects in anyone. It is effective for adults and for children in reducing cavities by 25% minimum. And I will tell you, as adults, we benefit more than children because we are alive longer as adults than children. Cost savings are huge. For every dollar from most communities, when you invested in water fluoridation, $38 per year per person are saved in dental treatment costs. I take a 38 to 1 return on investment any day. Water fluoridation saves money for taxpayers and the healthcare system. The CDC has named water fluoridation one of 10 great public health achievements of the 20th century. In that group was also immunizations, seat belts, and healthier mothers and babies. Americans are keeping their teeth longer into adulthood more than ever before, as Surgeon General Vivek said. Today, over 214 million people are served by fluoridated water that are on community water systems in the United States. That's almost 75% of community water systems are fluoridated. That's more people every 2 years. It's increasing. Millions of people every 2 years. In Cortland, there's only one community that's fluoridated. So in your county, you have 3.2% of Cortland County fluoridated versus statewide 71.4%. We need to change that. You do have some neighboring communities that have naturally occurring levels of fluoride in the water in Cayuga, Onondaga, and Tompkins counties. I hope I said those properly. That's because the water comes through rock formations on its way to our aquifer and picks up fluoride from the igneous rocks that are in the ground. Why do cavities matter? They're just something in your head, it's not connected to the body. Well, that's not accurate. Cavities are the most common chronic childhood disease for children. The most chronic. It's 5 times more common than asthma and 20 times more common than obesity. It is an infectious disease. It's caused by bacteria. It's spreadable, and it goes from one person to another. It causes extreme pain, loss of school hours, as the mayor said, loss of productivity of work hours. It causes less time to be able to learn in school. It results in poorer outcomes and children missing school. And some of the really sad stories are people die from cavities in this country still and around the world from abscessed teeth. This young lady at the top is abscessed tooth on her upper left. Her eyes closing. She has not been smacked by anyone. That is a serious infection that is close to going into her brain, and she could do easily what this young man on the bottom did. He died from an abscessed tooth that got into his brain. Serious, serious issues. What study designs are used for water fluoridation and what populations are studied? Well, primarily observational studies are what were done early on to look at water fluoridation. Again, back in 1901, they saw an effect that was going on. Here we have communities with low cavity numbers in it. What's causing that? Well, they looked for the cause, and they found that fluoride at levels of 1 part per million were very beneficial and caused no marks on the teeth, very white little spots, and that was it. That same study design is exactly the study design that was used by the Surgeon General and others to link smoking with lung disease, sexually transmitted diseases with sexual behaviors, chronic alcohol use, and health issues. You will hear that randomized controlled trials were never used for water fluoridation. I would challenge anyone that says that randomized controlled trials need to be used for water fluoridation to say they also need to be used for smoking and lung disease or any of the others. That's just not appropriate. Cross-sectional studies have been used, cohort studies have been used. Populations are studied is a representative sample of the population. You usually don't go and pick people and take a representative sample of the entire population. Fluoride levels that have been studied have been anywhere from 0, like here in the county, in the city of Cortland, all the way to 12 parts per million and beyond. And the studies to be of quality or incredible studies using a scientific method need to be typically a 3-year period minimum. And so they have been from 3 years to over 35 years in length. Water fluoridation we know is effective. By having water fluoridation at the levels of 0.7 parts per million, we see cavity reductions of 25% in children and adults. And that's because fluoride gets into your system, gets into developing teeth to make them harder from the inside out, as well as bathing them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, with saliva that contains fluoride. The health benefits of water fluoridation, again, reductions in cavities for everybody, and that is beyond what is already being reduced in toothpaste and fluoride rinses. Fluoride supplements, as a comparison, a fluoride supplement will be given in a community that did not have fluoridated water to try and mimic the amount that a child up to the age of usually 16 would get a fluoride supplement to mimic the amount of fluoride that they would have drank in a day's time. It's not in the same ballpark. It's a terrible, terrible way to handle things because compliance is about 30% for any medication. Compliance is 30% for fluoride supplements as well. Fluoride levels in water compared to dental sealants, there's no fluoride in dental sealants. Toothpaste, there's a high concentration of fluoride of about 1,100 parts per million, so they're They're different beasts, but they all work together to combine and to reduce cavity levels. Dr. Slott, I'm going to ask to come up for a second. How fluoride works. Fluoride works both, as I said, on the outside of the tube as well as on the inside of the tube. The outside, you would call that a topical approach. The inside, you're going to call that a systemic approach because it's getting into the bloodstream and into the developing tube. Dr. Slott's going to be...
Pay attention because this is why he brought.
Dr. Slott's going to be a molar. He's still under the guns. He's 4 years old. He's developing, and he's drinking fluoridated water from Cortland a few months ago. And so as he drinks fluoridated water, the water gets in. This is fluoridated water that I bought at the store today. It gets into his developing teeth. We call that. His developing teeth roots goes up through the inside of the tooth, makes the tooth harder from the inside out, and it makes it more resistant to cavities to begin with. Now, Dr. Slott, as his tooth comes in when he's 6 years old, he begins to still drinking fluoridated water. He gets the outside approach from that. He also gets fluoride from toothpaste that he put on his teeth, but it is that low amount of fluoride that comes out in his saliva 24 hours a day, 365 days a year that is bathing those teeth for adults and children to prevent cavities. Without it, you would have at least 25% more cavities. You're dismissed. Water fluoridation has a strong consensus of support. Your children go to the pediatrician. The American Academy of Pediatrics endorses water fluoridation as safe and effective. The American Dental Association, the American Medical Association, the CDC, Mayo Clinic, Institute of Medicine, World Health Organization, and every U.S. Surgeon General. That's just a partial list of the credible scientific organizations in the world that endorse water fluoridation as safe and effective. What are the health risks of water fluoridation? SIP. Expert committees and systematic reviews that are done to look at fluoridation, they all are in agreement. The evidence does not support an association between adjusted, which is fluoride added to water, community water fluoridation, and any adverse health effect or systemic disorder. Scientific reviews are done periodically to look at this, and that is the best method for determining in individual studies a systematic review of those studies to see what they show. I'm going to pluck two of these out of here just as examples. The first one is a Community Preventive Services Task Force guide that's produced for communities. The second is the National Research Council study. The first one is a study that's done of fluoride levels that occur naturally in the United States, like some of the communities around you have it. There are people that live in communities where, over to the right-hand side, there's about 200,000 people in the U.S. that live in communities that have very high levels of fluoride naturally in their water, from almost 6 parts per million all the way up to 16 parts per million. Above 4 parts per million, the Environmental Protection Agency says you can't drink it because there may be health issues that you could develop. So the EPA has what's called a maximum contaminant level goal. The word contaminant means anything in water that wouldn't normally be there. In other words, if it's distilled water, no contaminants. If it just has some murkiness to it, that's a contaminant. Fluoride's a contaminant. Sodium is a contaminant. So that's the word they use. So they set a health goal, the EPA does, at a concentration at which no adverse health effects are expected to occur, and the margins of safety are judged adequate. Well, this group for 3.5 years met 12 unpaid expert scientists and the best toxicologist in the world, Dr. John Gould. They've decided that after all the literature they've read, that there were only 3 things that they could say that the literature would really point to that they should look at that had sufficient relevant data at 4 parts per million of fluoride. And those were severe enamel fluorosis, skeletal fluorosis, and bone fractures. What did they find? Okay, the only thing they found at 4 milligrams of fluoride in water was effect on the tooth. They did not find any health effects at all. Musculoskeletal problems, no reproductive or developmental problems, no endocrine problems, no GI issues, no carcinogenicity, nothing. Some folks like to pull out parts of this study and say they looked at this, they looked at that. They did, but that did not apply. So the only health effect is severe fluorosis, which is a staining and pitting on the teeth down below. At 2 milligrams per liter, that went away. At water fluoridation levels at 0.7, it's 1/3 of that amount. Again, you can only get fluoridated fluorosis, which are the very mild and mild types from water fluoridation, up through the age of 8 while your teeth are developing. Moderate is from swallowing improper fluoride products like toothpaste, and severe does not occur from water fluoridation. The Preventive Services Task Force also agreed that community water fluoridation is recommended based on strong evidence of effectiveness and that severe fluorosis does not occur. What are the sources of fluoride used in our water? There are only 3 sources. They are fluorosilicic acid, sodium fluorosilicate, and sodium fluoride. That's the only 3 that are approved for use in the United States. Its regulations are by the Environmental Protection Agency, who sets strict standards on what those products have to meet to be able to be used in the water. They are evaluated by NSF International. There's a standard that's been developed by many, many groups, Standard 60, that requires that no contaminant be present, which exceeds 10% of the EPA maximum allowable level. Contaminants are things that were already in the rock that's harvested to get fluoride out of. And it is, the main one is arsenic, and it is extremely low. It is less than 10% of what the EPA says is okay to have. The question was, how can these people remove anything in the water, and whether fluoride or arsenic or anything else? About $170 reverse osmosis unit from Home Depot does a fantastic job of that. Impact on infrastructure? None. CDC will say that the concern of using fluorosilicate additives to fluoridate drinking water causes water systems and their pipes to corrode is not supported by the science. A few facts about Cortland, and the mayor already updid me on this, but show me to raise your hand if you think fluoridated, that Cortland has fluoridated water. Anybody think it has? You should know that it doesn't by now, so that wasn't very good my thunder. About 1/3 of our adults over the age of 65 here have lost all their teeth. 50% of your second graders have had cavities. Fluoridated water worldwide helps to reduce dental treatment in operating rooms by 2/3 to 3/4. Very young children often have to go to the operating room to receive dental treatment because they're not able to have it done in the office. Cavities are disproportionately distributed. Majority of cavities happen in a small percentage of people. We're not good enough yet to figure out who that group is. But we do know that the disadvantaged bear a disproportionate burden of disease, and Cortland has about a 52% cavity, 52% poverty rate, excuse me. Your choices. On the left, without water fluoridation. On the right, with water fluoridation. The mild dental fluorosis, if you can see it at all, are the little white specks on the teeth. This is directly off the CDC's website. Since the science is crystal clear, who opposes it? Well, some people truly believe that their illnesses are caused by fluoride in the water. And I commiserate. I mean, my parents, others have things that they think cause this or that, but the science does not support that. That's what we have to go on. 71 years of water fluoridation, over 3,000 studies and research projects have been done on water fluoridation. The most studied public health measure ever, more than vaccinations, and there is not a single health issue that fluoride at levels in water fluoridation has ever been shown to cause. Some people are being misled by those that are against it. The main opposition person and group is a Fluoride Action Network headed up by Michael Connett, Paul Connett's son, and there are many conspiracies that are thrown around on the internet about water fluoridation. Senator Patrick Moynihan probably summed it up best for this as other types of thoughts on opinions. He said, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. These are many claims made by the opponents of water fluoridation. Every one of them is wrong. You can read through them, I'll highlight a couple. One that you'll hear about potentially from Dr. Connett will be about the Cochrane Oral Health Group, a prestigious think tank of folks that looked at water fluoridation and put out a report last year on water fluoridation. Their summary was written in scientific terminology. It was not written in lay people terminology. It is supposed to be written for all decision makers everywhere in the world. The opponents of water fluoridation began to abuse that language and turn it into something of a crusade. The Cochrane group went back and totally rewrote their summary to shut that down. They totally disagreed with what was being said because it was not their findings. Toxicity of fluoride. Fluoride is on the Environmental Protection Agency list of toxins, not at 0.7 parts per million. It is a toxin at high levels. What else is on that list? Caffeine, aspirin, glass of wine I'm going to have later, alcohol. Those things are on it. Too much of things, bad for you. In the right amounts, can be great. Fluoride in the right amount is fantastic. You will hear a claim that fluoridated water contains 250 times more fluoride than mother's milk, and Mother Nature knows best. That's why she reduces it. Well, first of all, there are no known adverse health effects for infants from fluoride, other than mild fluorosis, this is what it looks like, with little white spots on the permanent teeth. Secondly, Mother Nature does not put enough vitamin D in the breast milk, vitamin K, or iron. Those three items have to be given to infants so that they do not develop severe disorders. Mother Nature provided a brain for us to have physicians and researchers to figure these things out. You will also hear about thyroid issues that are claimed to be made by water fluoridation. One was made in a community near me, and the top pediatric endocrinologist in the United States, I asked her about it, and she wrote a letter. And she said, as a practicing endocrinologist, I was appalled at the claims that fluoridated drinking water causes clinically significant harm to the endocrine system. So that is an incorrect statement. You will also hear that fluoridation causes a decrease in IQ. That was based on studies done in China, and they were so abused by the opponents of water fluoridation that the authors of this piece of work that came out of Harvard, Philippe Grandjean and Anna Choi, they had distanced themselves away from the opponents of water fluoridation. And even in an email to a gentleman down in Florida at one of the water plants, he said, Philippe Grandjean said, we do not wish to take any sides. Support for fluoridation is broad and wide. All the deans of the Harvard School of Dentistry, Medicine, and Public Health with Dr. Grandjean and Choi are in. All support water fluoridation as safe and effective. There is also manipulated data you'll see from the World Health Organization, where opponents will say that the graph on the top left is the actual World Health Organization data with points. They have done it on the right side in a linear fashion, which is nice because you can't really straighten out data points, but they did. And they said, see, rates of cavities are falling worldwide at the same rates. Well, cavities were falling worldwide whether you had water fluoridation or not, because that started at about the time that fluoridated toothpaste came into use. However, in the bottom graph, you see that the top level is the amount of cavities reduced by toothpaste and other topical fluorides. When you add fluoridated water, the bottom line, you reduce cavities by another 25% above and beyond those already being reduced. To summarize, the weight of the science is crystal clear. Every credible scientific group in the world recognizes water fluoridation as safe and effective. Not a single widely respected medical and health organization in the world, not one, opposes water fluoridation. There are no adverse health effects from drinking water fluoridation. Basically, you stack the science, which cannot be biased, over 71 years and 3,000 studies, to be a conspiracy. It is just isn't so. Please fluoridate your water. It is the right thing to do for your families, all of your families. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Our next speaker is Dr. Paul Connett, who will be speaking for 20 minutes, and then technology permitting, Dr. Bill Osmundson will be joining us via Skype.
Thank you. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you all for coming. I should be talking about the unnecessary risks posed by fluoridation. Just one comment on the last speaker. He spoke for 30 minutes. He did not cite one single primary scientific study. All opinion, endorsements, and reviews. Not one single primary study. I can't do justice to 21 years of research on this issue in 20 minutes, but I do have a book here which we can provide copies to the council who are going to make this decision. The many risks. Fluoride is not a nutrient. There is no need to swallow it. Even promoters recognize that the predominant benefit of fluoride is topical, not systemic. There's no need to force people who don't want it to swallow it. It's well established that fluoride interferes with many biological processes. For a review of this, see this review by Barbier and co-workers from 2010. You've heard about the National Research Council review. I should stress that the end result of this, they were asked by the EPA to review the safe drinking water standard, and they concluded that the 4 parts per million was not protective of health and urged the EPA to do another risk assessment. So much for there being no risks. Based upon the NRC review, there is no question that fluoride at certain levels can cause harm. But what about the low levels used in water fluoridation? So let me put 0.7 parts per million into perspective. Mother's milk protects our babies from early exposure to fluoride. The level in mother's milk is 0.004 parts per million. What this also means is that protection is removed from the newborn baby if the baby is given fluoridated tap water to make up the formula. At 0.7, the baby will still get 175 times more fluoride than nature intended. On page 85 of this National Research Council report, it shows that a bottle-fed baby, where the formula is made up of fluoridated water 1 part per million, exceeds the EPA's safe reference dose for fluoride, which is 0.06 milligrams per kilogram body weight per day. Studies which have shown fluoride causes harm at or near 1 parts per million. Fluoride damages the teeth at these levels, and Dr. Osmundson will show you the results of that. Fluoride damages the bone, skeletal fluorosis. About 50% of the intake of fluoride that you have each day is excreted through the kidney, but most of the rest concentrates in the bone, accumulates in the bone over a lifetime. And the first symptoms of skeletal fluorosis is identical to the symptoms of arthritis, pains in the joints, stiffness in the joints, etc. And even though arthritis rates are skyrocketing in this country, no US health authority has investigated the possible relationship between these arthritis rates and exposure to fluoride. If you don't look, you don't find. The absence of study is not the same as absence of harm. A study from Mexico showed that as the severity of dental fluorosis went up in children and adults in a high fluoride area, so did the rate of bone fractures. And what's significant about this diagram is that there's a significant increase between no dental fluorosis and very mild dental fluorosis. There's been no attempt to reproduce this study in the United States. Again, if you don't look, you don't find. An unrefuted study from Harvard by Bassin shows that young boys exposed to fluoridated water in their 6th, 7th, and 8th years had a 5 to 7-fold increased risk of succumbing to osteosarcoma by the age of 20. And no subsequent study, including Kim et al. In 2011, has examined this critical window of vulnerability. Even though this disease might be killing young people, fluoridation may actually be killing, not many, but a few young people. Again, if you don't look, you don't find. Peckham and others surveyed the incidence of lowered thyroid function in the UK, and they found a higher incidence in the fluoridated versus non-fluoridated areas. You can criticize the study, but to say that there's no evidence that fluoride lowers thyroid function is absolutely bizarre. Doctors used to give patients with hyperthyroidism fluoride tablets in the 30s, 40s, and 50s to lower thyroid function. Again, health authorities in the United States have completely ignored this issue and made no attempt to study any relationship between lowered thyroid function and fluoride exposure. Again, in 2015, Malin and Till, two Canadian researchers, showed that there was a correlation between the prevalence of ADHD in states, a correlation with the percentage of the state fluoridated. So the bottom axis is the percentage of each 50 state in terms of fluoridation. So at the left there's no fluoridation, at the right there's 100%, and the prevalence of ADHD you see going up as the percentage of fluoridation in the states goes up. And this relationship has got stronger with time from 2003, 2007, 2011. In 1978, Arvid Carlsson, who led the successful fight against fluoridation in Sweden, said this: "One wonders what an increase in the exposure to fluoride, such as occurs in bottle-fed infants, may mean for the development of the brain." In 2006, sorry, this is frozen on me. Should get it in a moment. Okay, this is what the NRC said. Remember the NRC study that he referred to showed no problems at all? This is what they said. Again, this is timekeeping. Okay. It is apparent that fluorides have the ability to interfere with the functions of the brain, and recommended more studies. Since 2006, many more studies of fluoride and the brain have been published. Today, over 300 animal and human studies indicate that fluoride has the potential to damage the brain. You can see a listing of all those studies on our website here. If you go to our website, just put in brain, you'll get all those studies. We have over 100 animal studies which says that fluoride enters the brain of animals and can cause physical changes. We have 34 out of 36 animal studies which show that rodents exposed to fluoride have a decreased ability to learn and remember. 50 out of 57 human studies link fluoride exposure to lowered IQ. 12 studies, 7 human, 5 animal, link fluoride with other brain function deficits, and 3 human studies show fluoride impacts the fetal brain. Now, what we have here, again, I hope you can slow down the clock with the slow. Okay, opponents of fluoridation then are waving 300 red flags. I'm not saying that any one of those studies, or even the whole lot combined, are definitive, but they are warning signals. They are warnings, 300 warning signals, that this stuff that these guys want to add to the water could be damaging your child's brain. Now, I ask you, and I ask them, how many green flags can Dr. Johnson and Dr. Slott provide us, which gives us the confidence to ignore the 300 red flags? Now, the only 2 that I've seen them cite is a short-term high-dose animal study by Whitford, and an IQ study from New Zealand by Broadbent, who, by the way, is clearly pro-fluoridation. This study is very poor, as it had very few controls. There were 900 people, children, drinking fluoridated water, and only 90 drinking non-fluoridated water, and half of those were taking fluoride supplements. So the difference in exposure was so small, this study had no power. And you can see a response to this study, both by a letter sent to the same journal, the Journal of the American Public Health Association, and an editorial in Fluoride by Bruce Spittle. So my question to my opponents tonight is, can Dr. Johnson or Dr. Slott cite any more studies? What have they read that gives them confidence Being dentists, they're not toxicologists, but what gives them confidence to say to you, you can ignore all these 3 studies? Now here's some examples of specific studies. Varnum gave rats 1 part per million fluoride in their water for 1 year. The exposed rats had kidney damage, brain damage visible in the microscope, great uptake of aluminium into the brain, and beta amyloid deposits characteristic of Alzheimer's disease. The study by Zhang and al. From 2003. This is one of the 50 IQ studies. It's one of the best. Do you want to handle? Do you put us? Yeah. If you're listening, Bill, I'm still talking.
Why don't you stop the clock?
You relax. Just for the record, how much time do I have?
Use 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Stop for a minute. I think the Skype call is frozen. Bill, Paul's still talking, but his presentation is frozen at the moment. Yeah. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll make sure that we call you. If we have any trouble, we will call you again once Paul's done. But right now, we're just trying to get his presentation going again.
Hopefully these presentations will be made available somewhere, the PowerPoints. If not, I can provide anybody with a copy of mine. Oh, I've got my computer. We can switch computers. Yeah, let's do it. This is the easy part. Wait till we get to Skype.
It's just too many things.
Yeah, there's too many things. Oh, yeah, got it. Yeah, that's John, yeah, thanks.
So we have collaboration going
Yeah,
on between the pro and the con.
very
So
good.
this is for you guys too.
Yeah, I think that. Okay, let's try that. Oh.
There it goes.
You all can be writing your questions.
You know, as a chemistry professor, this is one of my nightmares. Something like this happening at the beginning of your class. Drive me crazy. but we're nearly there. Thank you all for your patience. Okay, I think we're there. So one of the most important studies which was a very good study was one by Zhang from 2003. He compared the IQ of children in 2 villages in China. I had the opportunity to visit these 2 villages. There was a low fluoride village where the average in the well water was 0.36. This is natural fluoride. And a high fluoride village where the average was 2.5 parts per million fluoride. So not so very far from our levels. They controlled for lead exposure and iodine intake, both of which could cause problems if you're looking at IQ. And retrospectively, they controlled for arsenic. And what they found was a 5 to 10 IQ drop between the high fluoride village and the low fluoride village. And Zhang did one more thing, which was very important. He subdivided the high fluoride village into 5 subgroups. And in the green box there, you see the range of the concentrations in those 5 subgroups in the well water, the mean values. So group A was 0.75 parts per million, group B was 1.53 parts per million, and so on, increasing from A through D. If you go to the magenta box, you see the IQ, the mean IQ of the children in those groups. And it goes, you see a slight drop, but not statistically significant for group A. You see a more significant drop for the next group, and so on. I have plotted here. On the left-hand side, you see the mean IQ of these 5 groups, and on the bottom axis, you see the fluoride water levels, the mean water fluoride levels for those 5 groups. And you see you've got a dose-response relationship there, which is critical in toxicology. Now, this data would suggest that the IQ is lowered somewhere between 0.75 and 1.5 parts per million. We don't know exactly where, but we didn't see much effect in the first 0.75. We do see an effect of about 5 IQ points for 1.53. Now, in the parlance of risk assessment, when I was fighting incineration, I still am, one of my specialities was risk assessment. And with risk assessment, what you look at is the dose that causes harm. The first thing you look for is the lowest observable adverse effect level, which in this situation is 1.53 parts per million. The second, it was the no observable adverse effect level. It might be lower, but it could be that first dot. Now, Dr. William Hersey is a former risk assessment specialist at the EPA, senior scientist. And he used standard techniques to calculate, based upon this data, what a safe level would be for fluoride to protect all our kids. Not just the average kid, but all our kids. And what he found was the level was so low that you need to protect children, that water fluoridation would be unthinkable. And let me show you very simply how this is done. The first thing we got to do is what dentists normally don't do, and that is to calculate the dose. They always talk about concentrations, and they compare concentration. They say the concentration in this place where we found harm was so much larger than the concentration in where we fluoridate communities. That is a totally crude, imprecise method of seeing if a study which causes harm can be related to the typical exposure. What you have to do is to convert the concentration in the water to a dose, and that requires knowing how much water the kids drink and what fluoride levels dose they're going to get from other sources. If you do those two together, this 0.75 parts per million translates to a daily dose, total daily dose of 1.43 milligrams of fluoride per day. Pretty small. Now, in risk assessment, we have to do a second part, and that is to apply a safety factor. And this safety factor is to recognize that in this study we were only dealing with about 300 Chinese children. Now those Chinese children have the same, in this case, have the same lifestyle, the same diet, the same practically everything. But now you want to know what the safe level would be for the whole population of the United States, with different genetics, different lifestyles, different diet. And the typical safety factor is 10. In other words, you take the no observable adverse effect level dose and divide by 10 to get a safe level, safe reference level, which you consider would protect all our children from this problem. So dividing this NOAEL by 10, you get 0.14 milligrams per day, is what you wouldn't want children to go over that dose if you want to protect their brains. And yet, we get 1/4 milligram when kids swallow their toothpaste. If the pea-sized amount of fluoridated toothpaste contains 0.25 milligrams per day. This is what Bill Hersey, formerly with the EPA, said. It is unthinkable that you would add to this. What we are saying is that kids are already exceeding this so-called safe reference dose. Now, Johnny referred to the meta-analysis. Excuse me, it's not the opponents of fluoridation that have messed around with this and spun it like crazy. It is the promoters of fluoridation that have spun it, as they've had to do. Philip Grandjean, who you said apologized for the people, or some words to that effect, he said, fluoride seems to fit in with lead, mercury, and other poisons that cause chemical brain drain. Let me remind you that Philip Grandjean is one of the world's experts on the neurotoxicity of mercury. Now, the National Institute of Environmental Health Studies takes this issue far more seriously than the promoters of fluoridation. They requested the National Toxicology Program to review the literature on fluoride's neurotoxicity. And in July of this year, they reported that the animal studies showed low to moderate evidence of neurotoxicity. That is not none. In part 2 of their review, they will report on the human studies. And in part 3, they will report on their own animal studies. Now, I say to you, the very last children who need to have their IQ lowered are children from low-income families. And yet, children from low-income families are precisely the children being targeted. You heard tonight, low-income families, this is what they want to target in Cortland. Precisely the ones being targeted for fluoridation are the ones who do not need any further impact on their intelligence. So based upon what I've told you, I think water fluoridation should be ended. For children, fluoridated toothpaste should be used only under prescription, and safer methods be investigated for reducing tooth decay in children from low-income families, which presume better dental hygiene and better diet. Unfortunately, 97% of Europe does not fluoridate its water, and so we can look to see what they're doing. And one place that we should look to is Denmark. Denmark has the lowest caries rates in the world and has never fluoridated its water, salt, or milk. The Nexo method from Ekstrand and Christensen, this is what they do. Nexo is a community where the program began. The results were so dramatic in lowering caries rates that it spread to other Danish cities. The program began in 1980. The following graphs show results. The light blue bar is tooth decay in Nexo, and the dark blue is the rest of Denmark. You can see as the program has progressed, the Nexo is outstripping in terms of reducing tooth decay. The result is even more prominent for 15-year-olds. You can see that the Nexo is about 1/5 of the tooth decay of these other pretty good Danish cities. So what about the program? What about the program? The Nexo program is based on individualized, non-operative caries treatment for children and adolescents aged 8 months to 18 years. Both parents and children are shown how to perform proper oral hygiene, plaque control in home visits, and checked on each visit. If oral hygiene is not considered adequate, they shorten the time to the next visit. The aim is to maintain sound teeth using the fewest resources possible. Topical fluoride is given only if oral hygiene is not sufficient and caries start developing. And systemic fluoride is never used. They never use the swallowing of fluoride. Even sealants are not used because they are considered less effective than proper oral hygiene. If fillings or other dental work is needed, it is provided in a timely method. This is, one sentence, this is cost effective. And one of the reasons it's cost effective is because with these regular visits to children, infants, and parents, you can tell if the children are abusing their teeth with baby bottle tooth decay. That's sucking on bottles of sugared water, milk, fruit juice, even Coca-Cola. These lead to extraction of teeth in young children under anesthetics. It's extremely expensive and it's extremely traumatic for our children. So if we use this approach of education, not fluoridation, we'll save a hell of a lot of money.
Thank you, Dr. Connett.
Thank you.
And thank both the speakers for being adept with their laptops, which backed us up. And now I do believe we have Bill Osmundson, Dr. Bill Osmundson, sorry, joining us via Skype. No, he has 10 minutes. Dr. Connett had 20, so each side has a total of 30 minutes. And we stopped the clock when my computer caused technical difficulties. I apologize to all of you for that. Okay, so Dr. Osmundson, I'm going to put up your slides. I'm going to minimize you. So say goodbye for the time being. And we will, okay. So we are on your first slide, and you can just say next slide, please, and I will advance. So can you speak up? I think you were muted before I had asked you to mute. Are you unmuted?
I don't think I...
Yes. Keep talking.
Can you hear me?
Can people in back hear? Okay, you're on.
Hello, test, test. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. That's the number one reason that I have changed my mind on fluoridation, which I promoted for 25 years, is because of freedom. Next slide. On any one of these is a reason that the city should vote no fluoridation. Give everyone freedom. Extremely important. There's many other sources of fluoride. Number two, swallowing fluoride is not FDA approved. And the FDA is the Supreme Court of evaluating substances used to prevent disease. They are the bottom line, not the Surgeon General, not the EPA, CDC, it's the FDA. Many are swallowing too much fluoride. Paul, Dr. Connett has covered that well. Swallowing fluoride is not effective. We'll cover a little bit of that. And swallowing fluoride is not safe. So we need to make sure that people don't get too much fluoride, and it's not safe to swallow. Stopping fluoridation does not increase the case. One of the first things I did was to take my toothpaste that I gave 3 samples to and read the label. It says drug facts. Yes, it is approved by the FDA, and it is a drug. Drug facts say do not swallow. Use a pea-sized amount. Well, how much fluoride is in a pea-sized amount? Pea-sized amount has a, and that my pea size there is twice as big as what it should be, is a 1/4 milligram of fluoride, the same as each glass of fluoridated water. Now the city forces us to drink the same amount of fluoride. The FDA says do not swallow. It makes no sense to add fluoride to water when the FDA says do not swallow. Next slide. The Center for Disease Control says dental fluorosis only occurs when younger children consume too much fluoride. What teeth are developing under the gums? The white spots are dental fluorosis. The treatment below, because this patient said that the fluoride was damaged. And the CDC also says the prevalence of dental fluorosis is 41% among adolescents. So 41% of adolescents are getting too much fluoride. Why would you add more fluoride? Because of 41% are already getting too much fluoride. Next slide. You can see a scanning electron microscope where the hits, cracks, fissures in dental fluorosis. Next slide. Cosmetic treatment is very expensive. That's how I make a living, in part, is by treating these children who have had their teeth damaged because of fluoridated water. Next slide. Fluoride also causes complete cusp fracture to increase. In other words, the teeth do get harder, but they crack and split more.
We're on
Next
slide, this will be slide 7. Just making sure we're in sync.
4 pictures of teeth here. And it says at the bottom of fluoride water.
Okay, got it.
On the top left, we see a tooth, and it's very difficult to diagnose the case sometimes in the back teeth. Looking with a mirror in a classroom during the survey, it's difficult to diagnose. When we take a little bit of the decay away, we can see that it actually explodes into the tooth. That's a fluoride bomb. A tooth with not so much fluoride would be easier to diagnose and decay caught earlier. Next slide. Dr. Connett has covered some issues on different countries of the world. We have slides here, 2 of them, 2 published researches showing that using World Health Organization data showing that dental caries has decreased for all countries regardless of fluoridation, regardless of fluoride salts, regardless of fluoride in mother's mouth. Next slide. This is one of the most important slides. We can spend a long time on this one. This slide is research that was published showing that in 1930 on the left-hand side, going to 1990 on the right-hand side, decayed teeth went from about 11 when fluoridation really got hold strong in the United States about in the mid-60s. Decay dropped by about 5 teeth, regardless of the before fluoridation, and no research controls for that known. Next slide. This is a very important one by Ida. 39,000 children. And you can see here this what's the fluoride in concentration.
Alison, this is an important slide. Can I just give the commentary on this?
Yeah, so Dr. Connett's going to interject.
We can't hear you, Bill, so I'm just going to give the commentary I know you would have given. The blue bars are the increase in dental fluorosis for these 32,000 children with different levels of fluoride in the water. You see, as the fluoride levels in the water on the bottom axis go up, the dental fluorosis rates prevalence goes up. This is what you would expect. But the pink bars indicate the different levels of dental decay, again, versus these fluoride levels in the water. And you don't see a relationship there. It's flat. You do not see a significant difference in dental decay. Now, this is the largest study ever done in the United States, 32,000 children. It was done by the National Dental Institute. As you say, there's a strong relationship with fluoride levels and dental fluorosis, but a very weak relationship with dental decay.
We just had a little bit ago the 5-minute warning. I'm going to try to put you back on, but you're breaking up. Dr. Osmundson, I think we're going to have to abort or let Dr. Connett finish.
If you just advance the slides, I'm pretty familiar with these slides.
Yeah, so we've got, what, about 3-4 minutes?
4.5.
4.5 minutes.
You heard from Johnny that for every $38 spent on fluoridation, sorry, for every dollar spent on fluoridation, you save $38. This study has been debunked by Coe and Thiessen. This is an extreme exaggeration. It doesn't take into account the cost of treating dental fluorosis, which is huge cosmetic dentistry, and nor does it look at the alternatives, as I mentioned, in places like Scotland and Denmark, where you can have a dramatic saving in the treatment of baby bottle tooth decay, well, you can prevent that from happening, which would save a lot of money. Next. Oh. He reminds us that the Food and Drug Administration says for safety, do not swallow fluoride. That's on the back of every tube of toothpaste. And for efficacy, not effective. The FDA has just put out a letter to a drug company that was marketing fluoride supplements, I think 1 milligram per tablet, and told the drug company that that is not allowed. Fluoride is an unapproved drug. Most pharmacists do not know that. Next. After 70 years of fluoridation, there's never been a randomized controlled trial on an individual basis to demonstrate that swallowing fluoride lowers tooth decay. That is the gold standard. That's what the FDA would require for any drug. It's never been done after 70 years. And most of the studies that have been done are very poor studies, have not controlled for many confounding variables. In 2015, you heard from Johnny, that the Cortland Review, which is respected worldwide, looked at a few thousand studies and could not find any studies of that high value, which would require a randomized control trial. So it was a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, if you like. They knew beforehand there was no gold standard study has been performed. But they concluded that there were no, actually let's get their quote. Okay, these are all the confounding variables that are frequently, many of these are not controlled for in studies. What the Cortland Review concluded was that there was not strong evidence that fluoride reduces tooth decay, fluoridation reduces tooth decay in adults, that there's not strong evidence that there was an extra benefit from fluoridation over and above topical treatment. Notice that Johnny combined both the swallowing fluoride and topical treatment, which is cheating. It's the topical treatment that's key. They found no strong evidence that fluoridation reduced the disparity for income groups, which is a thing that the proponents always stress. We're doing this for poor kids. If you really wanted to help poor kids, you would get those 80% of dentists. Dr. Slott is an exception to this rule. 80% of dentists in this country do not treat children on Medicaid. So tooth decay is not caused by lack of fluoride, it's caused by too much sugar and not enough early interventions and poverty. That's what we need to address full head on. And the other thing that they concluded is there's not strong evidence that when fluoridation stops, that tooth decay goes up. Not strong evidence. They did concede there was some apparent benefit to fluoridation for young children, but they said that most of the studies for these go back to the 40s, 50s, and 60s. They were of poor quality, high evidence of bias, and didn't obviously couldn't acknowledge the fact that since those studies, it's fluoride topical treatment which has been the key factor, not only in the United States, but throughout the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're now moving into the section where we take questions from the audience. I don't know that we'll be able to get input from Dr. Osmundson. We will try to do that. So just, yeah, sure.
I received any number of questions. Some were duplicates, some were questions that were specifically answered directly in the presentations. Some of the scientific information I think would be sort of repetitive to ask those again, so I pulled them out in terms of those related to the first question that the planning group had. The second one is in terms of scientific studies and the validation of addition of fluoride, and someone, generic, really generic questions. So if you can press the 4 groups that okay. The other questions we will keep, and certainly we'll go through them and review them once again, and probably use them in this forum for a part of what we might decide identified as a problem. Some of them are very, very interesting, a lot of them are very repetitive. So that's what I've done for the
Okay, related to question number 1, how much water is needed, is used daily, even with baby formula? Likewise, how much water daily is acceptable or necessary, and on average, how much water do children in Cortland County drink? So I think these questions all relate to if we're fluoridating the water. How much water how much fluoride will we get from the water? How much water do we need to get the right amount of fluoride, etc. So let's start with the pro-fluoride. We've got 1 minute each for you.
I'm not sure what you're asking. What was the question?
So the questions are, how much water do people need? How much water do people use daily? And how much water is acceptable? So people are asking about the dosage of water that's recommended or the dosage of water that's common, and how that relates to what I'm presuming what you would get, how much fluoride you would get.
Well, I think what people are asking is how much fluoride are they getting for the amount of water they're drinking per day? Water is fluoridated at 0.7 milligrams per liter. So for every liter of water they drink, they're getting 0.7 milligrams of fluoride. That's the dose of fluoride. The CDC has estimated that of the total fluoride intake from all sources, 75% comes from water and beverages. So I don't have time in a minute to go through it, but a simple math equation will tell you that before the daily upper limit of fluoride intake before adverse effects could be attained, water toxicity would be the concern, not fluoride.
Well, I think we can be pretty precise about the infant. The infant drinks about 800 milliliters or 0.8 of a liter. And at 0.7, that infant is going to get 0.8 times 0.7, 0.35 milligrams. But then you have to take into account the very low body weight of the child, and that brings us back to what I said about the NRC. They concluded that a bottle-fed infant, where the water is made up with, form is made up with 1 part per million, is going to get over the safe reference dose determined by the EPA.
Well, to keep things even here, maybe one of you can answer and Paul can answer if we're going to do the 1 minute each, to be fair. So here's a question. I heard a report from CNN that British tooth health was better than the U.S. Is tooth decay improving or getting worse in the U.S. and New York?
Well, untreated dental decay is a massive problem in the United States and elsewhere. I'm not privy to the CNN report, so I don't know what that was all about. But the point is that we have an overwhelming problem with untreated dental disease. Fluoridation, in combination with all the other preventive measures that we have, is necessary. It's not an either-or situation. It's not either fluoridation or education or something else. It's all of them combined. One does not preclude the other. All of these measures that Dr. Connett mentioned, education and so on and so forth, have been ongoing for decades. They're not doing the job. Fluoridation has never been meant to be a magic bullet that would solve completely all dental decay. It's just a very effective, a cost-effective means in addition to all the other preventive means we have. We've got a huge problem here. We need all the help we can get.
Thank you. Dr. Connett.
Yeah, tooth decay, as I've already said, I've run out of juice on this microphone. Tooth decay is a function of poverty and poor diet, which goes often with poverty, and lack of access to professional care, early interventions. That's what the programs in Europe are doing. They're targeting exactly the cause of tooth decay, not the mythology of fluoride as a magic bullet, but they're targeting what really causes tooth decay, which is too much sugar, not enough understanding of how to brush your teeth in Scotland. The first class that the kids have in Scotland is how to brush their teeth. These are the simple steps that we need to do for low-income families, not to lower their IQ by forcing them to drink fluoride.
Next question. How many people in the city of Cortland have health issues that would force them to drink only non-fluoridated water? And perhaps since you are probably not familiar with the number of people in our city, perhaps you can discuss in general in a population, what percentage would have to drink non-fluoridated water?
0. The EPA sets the standard of 4 milligrams per liter as a level at which no health benefits would be an issue in the population, and the margin of safety is appropriate. 0 problems. They look at everyone with health issues at above 4 parts per million, and they have said 4 is protective of all health issues. They did, at the NRC review, say that severe fluorosis for the first time is a health issue. At 2 parts per million, severe fluorosis went away. Anyone that has any issue with their health can drink fluoridated water. It's safe for everyone, and it causes no adverse health effects. CDC says it. Why would they lie? World Health Organization says it. Why would they lie? U.S. Surgeon General just said it. I'm just right.
You had this prestigious panel from the National Research Council review all the literature, and what they said was that 4 parts per million is not protective of health, and they recommended that a risk assessment be determined. That was 10 years ago, and they still have not done it for politics. And it's politics which keeps the CDC promoting fluoridation. It's politics which keeps the World Health Organization promoting fluoridation. The EPA has yet to acknowledge these 300 studies which shows that fluoride lowers tooth decay. This 4 parts per million, Johnny, is hopelessly out of date. It was
Dr.
determined
Connett.
in 1986, and it was based upon crippling skeletal fluorosis.
Would you give us an estimate of what proportion of people you think might have health issues that would force them to drink unfluoridated water?
Although the proponents of fluoridation have never studied the issue, it's somewhere between 1% and 4% of the population is sensitive to fluoride, with a variety of reversible effects.
Thank you. Next question, and I'll start with Dr. Connett this time. Which of the major reviews of fluoridation and fluoride have most significantly shaped your views on the topic?
My review, definitely the National Research Council review of toxicology, 500 pages, 1,100 references. This is the Bible for the toxicology of fluoride. There's no doubt that fluoride damages health. The only issue is at what level, and the EPA is yet to determine what level that is.
Which of the major reviews?
It's the NRC 2006.
Yes, I'm sorry. I decided I should repeat the question.
Yeah, please do.
Which of the major reviews on fluoridation and fluoride have most significantly shaped your views on the topic?
Well, I have to.
Yeah.
I would also go along with Dr. Connett that the NRC review is a Bible, because it absolutely does not state that there is any health effect at all at 4 parts per million. They only found that severe fluorosis was there at 4, and it disappeared at 2 parts per million. You can look at any page and pluck something out of what they studied. You can pluck any page out. Their final analysis was there are 0 health issues below 4 parts per million except severe fluorosis. At 2 parts per million, that goes away. You can pick out any part of that that you want to. It's an enzyme inhibitor. It's this, it's that. Well, the final analysis was in all 12 members, including 3 anti-fluoride members of scientists on that 12-member panel, signed off on the final document that there are 0 health issues below 4 parts per million except severe fluorosis, and at 2, that goes away.
The next
That's
question
fact.
for Drs. Slott and Johnson to start. The Arthritis Foundation recommends fluoride to strengthen bones. Please explain how or why speaker claims fluoride causes arthritis. The Arthritis Foundation recommends fluoride to strengthen bones, so please address the claim that fluoride causes arthritis. Effects of fluoride on arthritis. Any comments?
Are you asking does fluoride affect on arthritis?
Yes.
The Arthritis Foundation says it's okay to drink fluoridated water when others are saying that it's not, that causes problems of arthritis. Is that something?
Apparently, I'm not familiar with the
Well,
Arthritis
there's
Foundation
there's
recommendation.
no credible peer-reviewed scientific evidence that fluoridated water causes arthritis. I mean, that's all that needs to be said.
Dr. Connett.
Well, that is absolutely untrue. If you look at the Indian literature, which has studied skeletal fluorosis more than any other country, they, back in the 1930s, identified the first symptoms of skeletal fluorosis as being identical to arthritis. And you really cannot say anything else because we haven't studied it in the United States. We spend more time promoting fluoridation and more money promoting fluoridation than actually studying the health effects of fluoride.
So this is, the next question is really a follow-on to the original question posed by the Planning Committee. Please specify the peer-reviewed scientific study. So this would be the original research rather than a government report. So the original peer-reviewed scientific study showing that adding this recommended amount, getting the water to 0.7 parts per million, does not cause any health problems. Dr. Connett.
May I respectfully request 2 minutes since Bill Osmondson's been cut out?
Well, we're giving 1 minute. No, I'm sorry. We're giving 1 minute to each side, so only one of the...
Oh, I understand. Okay, sorry, I thought you were... All right, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
And now I forgot the question.
Yeah, so this one, well, and maybe, I think in this case, I should address each of these questions. It's a biased question. So discuss the study showing that adding the recommended amount does not cause health problems. So I think this is going to the pro side because they're saying adding the amount. So they're looking for you to specify the original research that says adding 0.7 part per million does not cause any health problems.
Out of thousands of studies.
Yeah, there may be thousands of studies out there, but hey, this is your expertise. What would you say are the 2 or 3 that we should go look up? You know, we go home, we want to read the research ourselves. What would you say would be the best studies that we should go look up?
I can't pick you out 2 or 3. I can tell you Heller in 1999 showed that at 0.7 parts per million fluoride in the water, the cavities were reduced at the same amount as you went up to 1.2 parts per million, and that fluorosis increased slightly, so we were pushing as far back as 1999 in the literature to go to 0.7 parts per million. The government moves slowly, but the literature is replete with information showing that 0.7 parts per million is a sweet spot at which we have a balance between reduced cavities of 25% for everyone in the community, adults and children, and we have a minimal amount of the white specks on the teeth. I mean, you can look at Brunel Carlos, you can look at any of the number of studies that Dr. Connett says. The facts are, those studies all show that anywhere from 1 part per million down to 0.7 have an effect of cavity reductions.
Well, and maybe as a follow-up for both of these questions, you might send to the mayor just your top 3 scientific, original research. And so now I'm moving to Dr. Connett.
Well, I'd like to address that because I disagree with his response.
Fair.
Okay. Brunel and Carlos was the 39,000 from 84 communities. I showed you the data for that. The data from that study showed there was practically no difference in tooth decay between those children who were drinking water less than 3.3, between 0.3 and 7, between 0.7 and 1.2, and above 1.2. No difference in tooth decay. And yet at the same time, there's a dramatic linear increase in dental fluorosis for the same data. Some of that data was Heller, some of it was Brunel and Carlos, and some of it later data. But it all goes back to the same database.
Okay, so for the record, the moderator asked both the pro and the con folks to select 3 of the best original peer-reviewed scientific studies, both to address each of the first 2 questions, the health benefits and the health risks of the 0.7 part per million level. So thank you very much on that. We're going to move on. I think we've got another one on scientific studies, so you will address that in follow-up, and I think Common Council will be interested in hearing the answer to that. Oh, so here's another one on babies. How much of this fluoridated at 0.7 part per million water can a 10-pound baby consume in formula before being over the recommended limit? Dr. Connett.
Well, you'd have to do the calculations. I'm not good at doing mental arithmetic in front of large crowds. But if it was 0.7, you know that they're going to get 0.7 times 0.8 liters. So again, it's 8 times 7, it's 56, 0.56 milligrams. And now you would have to divide that by the body weight of the child, which is 10 pounds, which is approximately 5 kilograms. So divide 5 kilograms into 0.56, and it comes to 0.12, something like that, 0.12, which is almost twice the safe reference dose from the EPA, which is 0.06 milligrams per kilogram body weight per day. Now, I did that in my head, I did it in front of you. I might have to check that. But go through it, okay, so you can do your own calculations. What we're looking at is a child, a baby, drinking 0.8 of a liter.
Okay, thank you.
Well, don't you think there was one? I know, but would it be helpful for them to know? I mean, if it's complicated for me...
I think we need to end there, though. My apologies. And same question. How much of 0.7 part per million water can a 10-pound baby consume in formula before being over the recommended limit?
There is no credible peer-reviewed scientific evidence of any harm to infants or anyone else from optimally fluoridated water. Dr. Connett cannot provide any credible evidence of adverse effects on infants. Now, the Institute of Medicine has a daily upper limit of fluoride intake from all sources for infants, children, and adults over the age of 8. For infants 0 to 6 months, I believe it's 0.7 milligrams.
And how does that relate to the amount that that baby would get with fluoridated water?
Right. If a baby is drinking, if the powder formula is reconstituted with optimally fluoridated water, they're going to get, and they drink, I'd say, a liter of it. They're going to get 0.7 milligrams from the fluoridated water, plus the minimal amount of fluoride that's already in the powder, and that's going to be it.
Okay.
Now, the only effect of that that you're worried about
And your time is up.
is mild mental fluorosis.
Well, so both sides wanted more time on that one. Does baby formula, which must be mixed with water, increase the chance of dental fluorosis if this formula is the child's main source of food and if the water is fluoridated? So you can address this. If there's additional perspective you want to provide on the topic, go ahead, and we're going to start with the pro-fluoride group this time.
A minute?
A minute.
Okay, good. I did my master's research, initial research that was done on infant formula and fluoride content on it in 1983-85, published in a peer-reviewed, credible scientific journal, Pediatric Dentistry. We found that infant formula manufacturers were no longer using fluoridated water in manufacturing the concentrates and powders, so we realized that that was a good thing, because if kids were using that, infants were using that plus fluoridated water, maybe we were concerned that they might get what's called mild fluorosis, like I showed you in the picture, a few little white specks. That is the only issue. Infants, children, and adults moderate their water intake. If you've ever had a child, you understand they don't sit and drink a gallon of water. They don't do that. They moderate their own food intake unless we're forcing it on them. No health issues. Mild dental fluorosis is the only risk of using fluoridated water And the CDC says you can use it with infant formula, and I do too.
Well, to take Steve's own figures, 0.7 milligrams divided by 5 kilograms for this baby would be 0.1 something, which is almost twice the safe reference dose of the EPA, 0.06 milligrams per kilogram per day. But as far as the formula is concerned, as far as this is concerned, this categorical statement that the only health effect is very mild or mild dental fluorosis completely ignores the IQ studies. It completely ignores that. And I've asked both of you to produce the scientific evidence, the primary studies, which allow you to conclude that we can ignore that and keep saying that the only health effect is dental fluorosis. What studies have you got that you can show this audience and show me that you can negate 300 animal and human studies?
Where's your book from the NRC? One.
That was in 2006, the NRC. They said it needs more study and...
Time's up. Time's up. Did you already answer this question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
No, really not. I asked him
Please,
for
okay.
the primary
Time
studies.
is up. Please explain why a safety factor is needed in risk assessment when extrapolating from a small study finding harm to protect the whole population from that harm. And we'll start with the Dr. Slott and Dr. Johnson. Why is a safety factor needed in extrapolating?
Safety factors in medical care, pharmaceuticals, is one thing. The EPA, in their NRC study, EPA says that the safety factor of 4 parts per million is protective of any health effects in the population. Any health except severe fluorosis. No other health effects. You know, this is almost like a court of law. You are innocent until proven guilty. It's not like, well, let's go find out what fluoride might cause. Let's go find out something. This is not a witch hunt. If fluoride was causing issues, we would see the effect of it. And epidemiologists would be studying it. We'd be the ones from the mountaintop screaming to cut it out. We'd earn more money. Why are we doing this? This is what the science supports, not the opposite.
Well, to cite science for the EPA on the risk assessment is outrageous. If you look at the way they determine that's the 4 parts per million, it's absolutely outrageous. You have to do this seriously because we are exposing a whole population to a potentially neurotoxic substance. We know in these Chinese children that the IQ was lowered at the dose. You calculate the dose, the IQ was lowered at 1.43 milligrams per day. You need a safety factor because the Chinese studies was of 400 children at most, and they have different genetics, they have different lifestyles, different diets to American children. So you need a safety factor to get a dose which is safe for all your children. And that's the least you need. You're exposing the whole population. You can't be cavalier about this. And that's why you need a safety factor of 10. You divide the no observable adverse effect level by 10 to get a safe level to protect all our children. That is standard methodology.
Thank you.
Check the literature.
So following up on that question, we hear Dr. Connett say you need a safety factor of 10, and we heard earlier that effects were seen at 4 part per million, and the recommended level is now 0.7. I think there was another time when it was dropped, in between 4 and 0.7. When you talk about safety factor and, if 10 is not the right number, what's the right number, safety factor here?
The right number is 71 years of experience.
I'm sorry, this is really a risk assessment question. And
Well, that's the answer to it. We've got 71 years of experience with basically human subjects. Hundreds of millions of humans have been chronically ingesting fluoridated water for 71 years. There have been no proven adverse effects. The safety margin is clearly evident, is adequate. There can be no greater proof than that.
So the next question.
Well, I got it. Announcement.
Well, you already gave your answer of tenfold difference with yours.
Oh.
Yeah. So the next question, in terms of there being no adverse effects, the question is, what help is there for people if their teeth are discolored by the fluoride? Dr. Osmundson, I don't know if you can unmute, and we can try you again. Can anything be done to help them? Yes, right now we can. Yeah, what help is there for people if their teeth are discolored by the fluoride, and can anything be done to help them?
Yeah, there are different things that can be done by putting calcium on the teeth to try to help it improve. But generally what you do is do a veneer on the tooth, which runs between $1,000 and $2,000 per tooth. Generally there's 10 to 20 teeth that need to be treated, and that needs to be retreated about every 15 years on average to try to cover up the damage from the fluoride.
Thank you, and maybe you can just wave at me, and if you'd like to answer a question, and I'll try to see if we can hear you. I apologize for muting you before. The same question should go to the pro fluoride folks.
Would you read it one more time, please?
Yeah, so what help is there for people if their teeth are discolored by the fluoride? Can anything be done to help them?
For water fluoridation, at the appropriate levels, you get little tiny white specks. And using the numbers that the CDC has, that 41% of people have fluorosis, the white specks, 0 have the brown severe fluorosis. If you're going to treat those white specks with veneers, which is malpractice, you belong to be exposed for that. I have treated almost 90,000 kids in 30 years as a pediatric dentist. I have never seen one that needed a veneer on their teeth because of discoloration. It removes a little white spots. If somebody was bothered by it, we can do a light buffing of the surface and it disappears. A light buffing. But the most important thing is people like white teeth. So the first thing they say is, I don't like the color of my teeth. And these are usually teenage girls. My question is, what color don't you like? I don't assume it's the little white spots. They say it's the dark spots. I'm like, well, okay, then we can use some bleaching technique to bring it up, and that's what we do.
The next question, do water filters filter out fluoride? And it says reverse osmosis, filtration, so I think they're asking, if we want to get fluoride out, what do we do about that?
Yeah, charcoal filters, the cheap filters do not do it. You have to go to either distillation to get pure water, or a reverse osmosis, or bone char filters. All of these are expensive. Or you do what my wife and I do, which is to buy spring water. But it's extremely inconvenient. It doesn't protect you when you go downtown. Every cup of coffee, every glass of water that you have in a restaurant in Cortland will be fluoridated. When you go to your friend's house, you're not necessarily protected. So you can't buy your way out of this. It's best to make sure it doesn't happen in the first place. Put the pressure on your politicians not to allow this foolishness to take place. If you want to study it more, I suggest rather than go to the scientific literature, go to Europe and see what 97% of Europe is doing to get the same tooth decay or less than the United States without deliberately poisoning their population or forcing something on people that don't want it.
Okay, same question. Do water filters filter out fluoride? I think you may have addressed this in your talk, but
I
please
did.
reiterate.
I would
Reverse
be happy
osmosis.
to. A GE reverse osmosis unit from Home Depot for $170 will take out 87% of the fluoride in the water. You can remove that very easily, very cheaply. You don't need a big, expensive filter. You can buy one if you want, but you don't need it. The Europeans use salt fluoridation because their infrastructure is not appropriate to have water fluoridation. If they did, they would use it. They also use milk fluoridation. Yes, they do.
Okay, so we're going to just have a few last questions, and the questions that seem more appropriate for the upcoming forum on ethics will be held for that time. This is one of the basics that as a mom, I would want to know. How much water would my child need to drink every day to get enough fluoride to prevent cavities. And if you want to give an estimate, you know, a 50-pound child, some kind of ballpark there. So I guess we can start with the pro and then end with the
Water
cons.
fluoridation is based on the observation that drinking water with a certain concentration of fluoride will prevent dental decay. It's not based on a dose of fluoride that goes into the tubes. It's based on the entire population, observing the entire population, seeing what concentration of fluoride in the water provides the optimum level of dental decay prevention without causing adverse effects.
So if my child drinks 1 glass of water a day, that's adequate, and his child drinks 8 glasses of water a day, that's also
Well,
okay?
you're missing the point. The point is that you're drinking fluoride anyway in water. What fluoridation does is it just increases it to the point where you're getting a benefit from it without having adverse effects. It's in there anyway. You're drinking it. This just ensures that you're getting a benefit from it.
Okay, thank you. Time's up. So again, I'm repeating the question that we received. How much water does a child need to drink every day to get enough fluoride to prevent cavities? Dr. Connett.
What you heard from Steve is a belief system which has gone on for 71 years. The science, if you look at the study by Warren and L, which set out to determine the optimal dose, not concentration, the optimal dose to reduce tooth decay. They calculated the total dose from food, from water, from swallowing toothpaste. And they conclude, for children 0 to 9, and they concluded it was very difficult to determine an optimal dose. They could not find a relationship between the amount of fluoride swallowed and the lowering of tooth decay. That's the best science. And they concluded that it's probably time to abandon the notion of an optimal dose. And as far as seeing the difference, go back to the graph that we showed you, which showed that for 39,000 children, there is practically no difference in tooth decay from those who drank water at less than 0.3, drank water from 0.3 to 0.7, drank water from 0.7 to 1.2, and then those above 1.2. Practically no difference.
Thank you. And now we have a last question. Dr. Osmundson, since your practice involves treating dental fluorosis, I'll start with you. How common is dental fluorosis in areas using the recommended amount of 0.7 parts fluoride per million parts water?
That's a very good question. People live in different communities and they don't always grow up with fluoridated, non-fluoridated water. But in my experience of working in non-fluoridated and fluoridated communities, it really doesn't make any difference where they're at. Many people are getting too much fluoride. Just a pea size of toothpaste is the same as a glass of water. We have options to it. We don't need more fluoride. But I diagnose dental fluorosis almost every day. I treat dental fluorosis frequently because I'm a cosmetic dentist. Dental fluorosis is harm for some people. If I took a key and scratched your car, that car would run just as fine with or without the scratch. But you and I would both call it damage. If I damage somebody's teeth, well, maybe you like that damage, but most people don't. And the CDC says dental fluorosis is a sign the child got too much fluoride when the teeth were developing. We don't need to give children fluoride. If somebody wants to swallow...
Time is up. Thank you. And the same question for the pro side. How common is dental fluorosis in areas using the recommended amounts of 0.7 parts fluoride per million parts fluoride?
There has been a percentage stated somewhere. It is less than 10% of an increase of fluorosis. Again, we're talking about the little white specks of mild, very mild to mild fluorosis. You will not see it walking down the street. Oh, but you are seeing it walking down the street because it doesn't show up. So to treat that, you only develop that up to the age of 8. Adults cannot develop fluorosis. To treat that with any type of destructive process of a veneer on a tooth is unethical. You do not need to do that to a tooth. You are destroying tooth structure for something that is not harm the tooth. In fact, that tooth is more resistant to cavities, and here you are going to take something away and put an artificial veneer on it that has to be replaced every 10 years. That is ludicrous.
So the last question, and I think this is probably a rhetorical question for you all to think about as you leave this venue tonight. Why does the City of Cortland Common Council leaders, why do the Common Council leaders have the sole deciding vote on fluoridating our municipal water supply? Fluoride is not a political issue. It is a health and wellness concern to the residents and workers within the City of Cortland. Should the issue be determined by a public referendum? And hey, representing the League of Women Voters, that gets us to voting, and it's a reasonable place to end this very interesting forum. Thank you all for your time.
Alison, can I just, this is not an answer to the question.
I'm sorry.
I would just like to thank Steve and Johnny Johnson for appearing here tonight. It's very, very rare indeed to get an opportunity to debate 1 on 2 or 2 on 2, and I thank them for making this effort. Thank you.